hopefully this will turn out really well. I'm pretty excited about it. Just want to put on my headphones there so I can hear myself. So now today's episode, and if you're listening to us on iTunes, please write a review, as it is one of the ways that I have to help improve the show. If you're watching the Blab, please join. I'd love to have you as part of the conversation. If you're new to Blab, then you can certainly check that out by visiting blab.im, and then we can communicate via live stream. So it's really pretty cool. Now, today's episode, I want to go over HOAs. Now, in Arizona, HOAs are pretty significant. And this is to do with homeowner associations when you're purchasing property here in the state of Arizona. California has quite a few HOAs. Other parts of the country may not be familiar or as familiar with HOAs. But here in Arizona, you need to be familiar with HOAs, because I have some horror stories that are probably going to scare a lot of people away from HOAs. So with that being said, what is an HOA? Well, an HOA is, like I said, a homeowner association, and that is a group of individuals elected by the neighborhood to uphold the rules and regulations of the neighborhood. Now, the thought process behind an HOA is to help keep the properties, the value of the properties, if you will, up and stable by having these certain rules and restrictions that everybody votes on. In other words, if you own a home in that particular area or that particular HOA, you can't necessarily paint your home pink when all the other houses are brown. You can't have a workshop in your garage when nobody else has a workshop in the garage. And it's all in an effort to help keep the property values up and stable. Now, with that being said, the rules, they are what they call the CC&Rs. Now, the CC&Rs are the covenants. Let me grab that here for us so I don't get it wrong here. But the covenant, conditions, and restrictions. And these are the rules that are part of the HOA. And these are the rules when you're purchasing into a home that's a part of an HOA that you need to follow. If you're not following those rules, then you are subject to penalties. And these penalties can be very, very intense, if you will. So you want to make sure that when you're purchasing a home that you follow the CC&Rs, that you get these CC&Rs, and your realtor can actually provide that information for you when purchasing a home. But you need to know these rules, because if you are, a mechanic and you work on your car and you do some of that stuff out of your home, then you may not be able to per the CC&Rs and per the rules and regulations. And if your neighbor sees that you are doing that, they may turn you in and report you to your to the HOA, and then you're subject to a lot of fines. And I'm sorry, I'm stuttering there a little bit, because I'm actually doing several things here at once on the Blab to put the word out. So with that being said, you want to make sure you follow the CC&Rs. The CC&Rs are so vitally important because, again, if you have a situation where you need to do something with the house and you're purchasing the house for a specific, maybe business, or, maybe you're running a daycare center or something like that out of the home, you need to follow these CC&Rs, because if you're caught doing that and it's against the rules and regulations, you are subject to fines. And if they put a fine and you don't pay it, you refuse to pay it, then they could put a lien on the home, in which case then they could foreclose on the home, and you're out. You're out of the home. And believe it or not, on HOAs, they do have a lot of leverage when it comes to those types of laws. You can't go to your local attorney general's office and countersue them or anything like that. The HOA is very specific, and you enter into that contract knowing those rules, and if you don't obey by those rules, then you are subject to those sort of things. Now, that's the extreme, okay, as far as what you are going to be subject to is getting a foreclosure. That it does happen, unfortunately, but doesn't happen all the time. So that's a good thing. Now, once you purchase the home, what are you liable for, if anything, with this HOA? Well, there's usually a monthly fee that is associated with the HOA that you are responsible for. So you need to make sure that you make that monthly payment. And And sometimes a lot of times they charge that on a quarterly basis. So it may be here in Arizona, an average is about $50 a month. And you once every quarter you have to pay $150. That is billed separately from your mortgage statement. It's not included in your home loan. It's included separately from that. So that is something that you are liable for, and you're liable for following the rules. If you don't follow those rules, as I said before, you are subject to some stiff, not necessarily stiff penalties, but you are subject to some penalties. And part of that here in Arizona, a lot of people want to change the landscaping and other things that are exterior of the home. HOAs don't control the inside of the home. They only control the outside of the home and the neighborhood and some of the common areas of the home. So the streets of the home, for example, here in Arizona, if you need your street repaved, the HOA is going to cover that. The city in which you reside in, whether it be Phoenix, Glendale, Tempe, whatever, they're not going to cover that inside the HOA or inside the neighborhood. So you want to make sure that you check the CC&Rs to see what exactly you're going to be responsible for as a member of that HOA. Because if the streets are not in good shape and they need to be repaved, that you may be subject to, if you purchase that home, a raise in your HOA fees. So very important that you look at those CC&Rs and know what you're getting into as far as that goes. And remember, your realtor can always get the CC&Rs for you, so you can review this before you actually purchase the home or you finalize the contract on the home. Now, it's a little bit different on an HOA on a condo versus a single-family home. When I speak of HOAs, I'm mainly referring to the single-family homes. They're a lot alike in a lot of ways, but an HOA in a condo is going to have a little bit different set of rules. For example, in a condo, there's generally a lot more common areas. There may be a pool, there might be a rec center, that sort of thing. And they control what happens in that rec center. And again, that's all part of the CC&Rs. Generally in a neighborhood with single family dwellings, you don't have a rec center. Although out in Sun City and some of the retirement communities, we certainly have golf courses that are a part of it and other rec centers, weight rooms, that sort of thing. Which actually brings me to a story out in Sun City. This just recently happened here in Phoenix. There's a knitting club that some of the retirees were a part of, and they were actually knitting stockings for Christmas stockings. And in the CC&Rs, it had stated that the rec center could not be used for any type of religious events. And so somebody had turned them in, and mind you, these are just little old ladies. Somebody had actually turned them in saying that they were holding a religious event by knitting these Christmas stockings. And the representative from the HOA came in and shut them down. Now, to the old ladies' credit, if you will, grandmas that were part of this HOA or part of this club, if you will, they actually were pretty offended by this, and as many other members of the community were actually offended by this. Not really in a religious event, they're just knitting stockings for Christmas. But because they were knitting them for Christmas, they were tied to a religious event. And they actually shut them down. Now, this one particular grandmother, older lady, had actually countersued the HOA. That's still pending right now. It's still pending to go through our court system here locally. But she's actually saying, hey, I pay my dues, and I have just as much right to this rec center as anyone else. And so you can't tell me under my freedom of religion that I cannot do these sort of things. Now, we'll see where this goes, but it is bringing up some pretty interesting perspectives on HOAs. And some people, either you like them or you don't. I personally, I'm part of an HOA, and I actually like it. My HOA, I visited the actual monthly meeting on that, and before I actually purchased and went in under contract on the home, and got to know the board members, introduced myself, asked them some questions, asked to look at the financials of the HOA. That's a big indicator if an HOA is going under, which can hurt the value of your home if the homeowners aren't paying their dues and they fall behind on their expenses. That could be a huge problem. You don't want to buy a home and only to find out that the HOA is going under. So, my advice would be to attend an HOA meeting if you can. They're not always scheduled in conjunction with you purchasing a home, but if they are, then I would highly advise attending one of those HOA meetings and looking at that before you actually get under contract. And you can also go to the board members, find out who the board members are, and actually ask for the transcripts, if you will, of the previous board meeting, because all that stuff is recorded. It's very legal. It's like a legal proceeding. So it's very, very public that you can get that information. You can read that and see what was discussed. As a homeowner in the association, you can actually attend these meetings and bring up any problems that you may see in the neighborhood, whether it be burglaries, anything that you may see that may be a problem. You can bring it up at that meeting. That's your opportunity to do that. Now, one thing that's also, you may ask yourself, well, okay, in the HOA, who manages the HOA? Well, there are companies out here in Arizona and in California that actually will manage the HOAs, and they will make sure that the HOA follows the guidelines, the CC&Rs. And so everything blind. Hello, how you doing? Just talking about HOAs here. If you're part of an HOA, you can certainly join if you'd like. You don't have to. I'm kind of talking to myself right here. This is my first blab. So if you want to, you certainly can. But the governing body that manages the HOA, they're the ones who are going to make sure that the CC&Rs are followed. And then you have a management company who's going to make sure that the HOA or the members of the homeowner association are actually following the rules set forth under the Arizona state law here in Arizona. And if you're in California and you're in an HOA, then there's going to be California state law that are going to govern how the proceedings and how everything is managed. So now, what are your rights as a homeowner under an HOA? Well, you don't really have too many rights under an HOA. Your rights, you kind of sign them off being a part of that HOA. And if you accept the terms and the CC&Rs of the HOA, then you're accepting their rules and their regulations. As I said before, there have been many lawsuits that have happened here in Phoenix, here in Las Vegas, Southern California, where people have lost trying to sue their HOAs for certain items. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I've heard some horror stories being in the business here in real estate here in Phoenix. There are some certain just crazy stories that have been told. And with that being said, you get two sides of the fence. You either like the HOAs or you hate the HOAs. And some people will not purchase a home in an HOA. They absolutely refuse to do so. And then there are others who have no problem. Who have no problem about being in an HOA. As I said before, I'm in an HOA, and I actually enjoy my HOA. They do a great job, and I really feel that they help our value. And you're going to find in most communities here in Arizona, especially if you reach a certain price point, DC Ranch is one of them, McCormick Ranch, where you have multi-million-dollar homes. They have very strict guidelines on what you can and cannot do to your property. The color of paint that you can do, the type of plants you can plant in your front yard. Now, when it comes to your backyard, you can do whatever you want. Inside the house, you can do whatever you want. But the outside appearance of the home and the neighborhood and the aesthetics of the neighborhood are tightly controlled by these HOAs to ensure that property values are upkept and stable. So with that, that's pretty much covers HOAs. And I just want to come on with a quick blab here about HOAs. Certainly you can catch my next one if you want. And if you're listening to me on iTunes, please write a review, as it is, again, one of the only ways that I have to ensure that I can put out good quality content for you and your homeowner search, or your home search, if you will. So if you have any questions or anything, please email me. You can connect with me on any social media. I'm out there everywhere. YouTube, now Blab, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. I don't know, Viper, if you want to join. Or if you had questions about an HOA or not, you certainly can join if you'd like. I guess maybe I can unlock the seat, I suppose. So I don't know, and I'm just testing some things out here. I hope the sound quality comes out really good on this blab, and I hope everything works out really well for this, because I think this is a great tool to help get the word out there about and have interaction with your audience. So hopefully this works out really, really well. All right, you're good, Viper. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end this right now. So take care, and I'll